Hi you guys, welcome to day 2. I hope yesterday wasn't too much for you. We're almost done with the manual camera stuff and then we're on to super fun things. So today we're covering one more manual setting that also works together with ISO and shutter speed from yesterday. And then we're going to talk about how to get cooperation from your kids at the end of today's class. Stick with it, you've got this. Tomorrow we're going to start learning how to edit in Lightroom. So you're going to want to have it downloaded and ready to go so that tomorrow I can take you step by step on exactly how to edit. You're going to be watching my screen as I talk to you tomorrow. So it makes it really easy to do half screen on your computer and half of your actual Lightroom on your computer. And then just watch a part, do it, watch a part, do it. It makes it really simple. Okay, you guys, today we're talking about aperture. The aperture is the measurement used to describe the size of the opening of the lens. A larger or wider aperture or opening lets more light pass through the lens. A smaller aperture or opening lets less light pass through the lens. A large aperture is represented by a lower number on your lens. It might be 1.8, 2.4, or 4.0. These are large apertures because your lens is more open when you have it set to these numbers. A small aperture is represented by a higher number on your lens. It may be 8, 12, or 16. These are small apertures because your lens is less open when you have it set at these points. Did you catch that? Large aperture is smaller numbers and small aperture is larger numbers. In addition to the amount of light that a lens lets in, aperture also determines the depth of field. Depth of field is the amount of the image that is in focus. So when your lens is set to a wide aperture like 1.8, you will have a very shallow depth of field. Only a small amount will be in focus. That is, the areas before and beyond the point of focus will be blurry, and the point of focus will be sharp but small. A shallow depth of field, where you only have a small point of focus, can be very artistic and is particularly popular with portrait shots. Here's some examples. Do you see how the background and foreground are blurry? The part of the image that's in focus is very small. These were all shot with a wide aperture. If your lens is set to a small aperture like 16, you will have a very large depth of field, meaning that your point of focus will be very large. There won't be much in the image that's blurry. That can be really useful for things like large family photos. However, because it's a small aperture, it doesn't let in very much light. So you have to be able to compensate for that, and it won't always work in every situation. My favorite apertures tend to be wider, or the smaller numbers. Usually the smallest aperture that I use personally is about a 4.0. But don't feel like you have to do that right away because it's a lot more difficult to get your focus correct when you're using a wide aperture. So work your way into it. Most lenses also have a sweet spot, an aperture or two where it's got a really sharp, clear, beautiful focus that's better than the rest of the numbers. Start playing around with your lenses and see if you can find what aperture number that sweet spot is. Okay, and that's it for aperture. So we've covered ISO, shutter speed, and aperture. That's really all you need to know as far as manual settings on your camera. It really wasn't that hard, right? I'm going to have you play around with aperture now for the next little bit. Every lens is different on how you change your aperture. So if you're having trouble figuring it out, you can ask me, but I may or may not be able to be helpful with your specific camera. Probably the best thing to do is to Google how to change the aperture on your specific camera make and model. Okay, now we're going to switch topics to something that's a lot more fun. How to get your kids to cooperate for pictures. This is probably the #1 question I get from people. How do I get my kids to cooperate? I'll tell you, this topic is actually pretty detailed, and I've got a lot of really specific things that you can do to help with this problem. But we're going to talk about that in a future class in a couple of days. Today, I'm just going to give you a couple of tips and tricks that might help you over the next couple of days to get cooperation from your kids. One thing I want to make sure you're very clear on is that my kids are uncooperative probably as often as yours are. I just have my camera out a lot more. Just like any other kid, they fuss, they whine, they run away, they cry and complain. Sometimes they even just make a cranky face for every image. But here are a few things that have worked for me. First, I like to really pay attention to the time of day when I'm taking a picture. Not necessarily for lighting purposes, although that is really important, and we are going to spend several days talking about lighting next week. Although I'm always looking for good light, what I'm talking about here is not necessarily is the lighting best right now. What I'm talking about is I know my kids' schedules and I know how they act. I know that Greta gets super grouchy about 20 minutes before she's ready to go down for a nap, and that Hazel is basically non-functional in the mornings. I know that my two older girls are pretty much zombies for the first half hour after they get home from school. So those are times when I avoid taking pictures because I know I'm not going to get the cooperation that I need from them. Second, kids love to play. I'm going to give you tons of really specific examples of things you can do to use this, but basically if you can turn something into a game, they're going to cooperate better. If you're having fun, kids will usually mimic your energy. Third, give your child some ownership over the process. Let them snap the first few pictures, look through the viewfinder, choose where a shot is going to be taken, or view the photos that you've taken of them. Letting them be a mature part of the process can go such a long way, even with really little kids. Fourth, bribe those little buggers. If needed, I'm totally not above bribing my kids for good behavior. If you're doing something edible during the shoot, make sure it's something small, something that's not going to make a mess, and something that you can bring out one at a time without them seeing the whole package. Things like Smarties work great, but M&Ms make a spectacular mess. Also, if you bring something like fruit snacks or chocolate chips, do not let them see the whole bag at once. Pull out one at a time, really sneaky, and give them one so that they don't start demanding the whole thing and fall to pieces. Finally, respect their little feelings. If they really don't feel like taking a picture, respect that. Move away, try again later. Our goal is to not make them hate your camera. We want them to have a positive experience as often as possible so that they cooperate more and more every time. So there you have it. Practice playing around with your Aperture today so that you can figure out how it works. And try incorporating a couple of cooperation tips to get your kids to take a better picture today. Your photo challenge for today is detail. Take your photo, choose your favorite one, post it under video 2 on our private Facebook page. And remember, you're more than welcome to comment on your classmates' images and tell them what you love about it. I'm all about that sense of community and cheering each other on. Good luck today, and as always, I am absolutely available at any time to answer questions. See you tomorrow.